Hey everyone, welcome to Breakthrough Conversations. My name is Danielle Perry and I am the host. You should know by now, I'm excited that you're tuned in today for a new episode of this podcast. And if this is your first time, this is a Christian podcast which features people of all ages, and they share a bit of their story about how God has helped them to overcome a difficult challenge, situation, or season in their lives, or maybe they're on their way to overcoming with God's help. And they do share authentically. Well, if you are back, then you are ready to see part 2 of this episode featuring Mrs. Algenia White, where the title is Becoming Saved After Witnessing My Mom's Death. Woo! If you have not seen part 1, go and check it out. Trust me, you will want to hear this amazing story, this amazing testimony. But here it is, y'all. This is part 2. Enjoy and be blessed.
I already planned when we have this conversation, we're going to meet up and all this stuff. He's going to pick me up. We're going to go. I'm going to have a good frank conversation with him because I'm not going to be just hanging out and he's not making nothing official. And, you know, what is this? Are we just friends? What's going on?
Right.
So we get together. He picks me up. And I think this is before we go to the gun range or after. I can't remember. But we're sitting in the car and he's going to take me somewhere else. To my grandma's house, and because at that point I'd built a relationship with her, and I said, "Yeah, I just really wanted to talk to you, have a conversation because, like, what is this? You know, like we're hanging out a lot more than just like everybody else is hanging out, and I just can't have no relationship stop me from getting to Christ. So, friends, are we just friends? I don't want to, because it's so hard to read. I feel like I'm like a book. Like you can read how I feel, my emotions on my face. This guy is hard to crack. And so he took other people to the gun range. He, just to brag on my husband a little bit, but in college, he had so many friends that were females that he would not like in a like, oh, whatever, but like in a little way, like he would help them learn how to drive and get their license. He would help people like, oh, if you're struggling, I remember he would take them to the gun range. Hey, try this different experience. But he was always helping people no matter what. Like, oh, you're going to have a party, I'll come help set up. Like that's his personality. He's always like that. So I'm thinking maybe he's just treat me like he treat everybody else. And I'm just not used to it. I sit down, I have this conversation with him. So what are we? What's happening? What are we? He looks at me, he says, yes, I have been praying and the Lord has said, you are my wife. I have already talked to other people about this. He had talked to like 2 or 3 people in Living Waters. He had talked to this person. And they done gave him advice. He didn't already started looking at rings. The Lord said, you are my wife. And I'm looking at him like, what just happened? I think I'm pulling it on him. And he's like, I came prepared, sis. I'm ready. Like, and I was like, what just happened?
Wow.
So that completely, let me tell you how that changed the dynamic of the relationship. You understand that I am used to relationships. And so I am the one in charge on top. I am the one that is going to kind of lead things because I want it to be my way. I've experienced these scars and all these different things.
Right.
So I learned by looking at my mom that she would let the guy lead and she would get hurt and she would have all this pain and angst. And I'm not going to experience that. No. I'm going to be in charge and control. And so the best way to do that, is to approach it first. Like if there's something there, I'm going to say something. And then this guy, this quiet dude, don't say a whole lot, but it's super helpful. The Spirit of the Lord is on him. He comes and he says, nah, I already figured all that out. Don't you worry. And I'm like, what is happening? And that just goes to show, I always say the love of Christ for me, that Christ is like, you don't have to do it by yourself. You don't have to do it on your own. I got you. I already prepared you. And that's what it felt like. And so that was how we started dating. And Mike made it clear, 1, you're not just my friend like the other girls that I, would help out with. 1, 2, this ain't no regular relationship. This is a courtship, which means if you agree, there will be no nothing. When I say nothing, no kiss, no hand holding, we ain't doing none of that.
Oh, wow.
We're going to have boundaries. And if we get past the boundaries, then we need to talk. We're going to have accountability partners. So we had, I think, 2 of them, and they would check in on us.
Yeah.
It would be 10 o'clock at night, and they would know that I was at his house, and they would text me and be like, hey, where you at? What you doing? When you going home? You going home, right? And I'm like, we just started the movie. They're like, well, you need to end it and go home. And I'm like,
that's right.
Daughters created this amazing atmosphere where yes, we all kind of came in at the same time, but there was also this group that had already been there and melded together that created such a huge accountability just as a Christian. But once we started our relationship, there were a number of people that was like, check in on us. And so it was such a family dynamic to it that I felt like we had no choice but to succeed, if you will. And the only people that was going to get in the way was going to be us.
That's right.
And so that was different. That was completely different for me.
Wow.
That was different for me to have this guy take charge and for him to have already spoken to God and for this relationship to start that way. And so that's how we started. And we kept that. And I did not kiss him until we got married on our wedding day. And that was all glory to God. But that was a huge experience for me. That was different. I was not used to that. It's so
you know what? I think y'all might have set the example for us because Jared, for those who don't know, Jared was Mike's best man in your wedding, right?
Yes.
And as you're talking, I'm kind of recalling when Jared and I began to date, and I remember him saying, "We're not going to kiss until we get married."
Mm-hmm.
And he may have said, that's what Mike and Algenia did, and maybe probably explains a little bit of your story. But I ain't gonna lie, I was like, "We not gonna what? What you talking about? Like that ain't in the Bible." But I'm glad that we did it that way because it was not a thing of we made it. This is scripture, right? Because we knew that it wasn't scripture, but it was, we knew our limitations.
That's it.
You know what I mean? We knew our limitations. And if we were to kiss during our relationship, we probably would have gone too far before marriage.
I told Mike one day, I said, if I ever kiss you before we get married, I'm going to rape you. It's going to happen. Like, you're not going to like it, but I don't know what to tell you. So you better stay away because it was so different. I was like, oh my gosh, like, are you? And then I struggled, personally with that particular spirit of wanting to, pleasure myself in a way that wasn't necessarily pleasing to God, but knowing that I didn't know what to do with all that. I didn't know what to do. But even in that, I had to be honest with Mike and have frank conversations like that and say, hey, this is what I'm struggling with. So either we need to like back off a little bit, not the relationship, but just maybe the proximity, or we need to pray a lot more. Something has to happen. Because I'm struggling over here. And so just being able to share the struggles and share the different things that we're going through, I think grew us together even more. And it didn't break me.
That's good. That's good. How old were you both when Mike proposed?
I was 22. And he was 24, I believe. I had just graduated from college, actually. So I was probably 21. So I just graduated from college, and I remember having my college graduation party, and my uncle put it on for me, and it was like a huge thing. And everybody thought he was going to propose to me that day. But what they didn't know is that me and Mike had a very serious conversation before that. And like I said, Mike can be quiet, but when he says something, like it's serious. And he's like, he had a frank conversation with me about just where I was. Maybe, I don't remember exactly. I remember it was me that I needed to work on some stuff spiritually. And he's like, if you don't, basically, like, if you don't work on these things, then we're not going to be moving forward with marriage anytime soon. That one of those kind of conversations. And I was, okay, whatever.
I love it.
We don't even get married. So what are we even talking about here?
Yeah.
But then God did a work. And so when the party came, I knew he was not going to propose because we had just had that conversation and I barely did nothing. So I was like, okay, he ain't going to propose. And then it was 2 years from the date we started our courtship, where we had that conversation of, hey, we're going to be together, but we're going to set these parameters in place and so there could be no normal relationship. And it was 2 years exactly from that date when he proposed. So I was 21 and he was 22. But I will never forget, Pastor Lawrence was like, don't be engaged for a long time. Right? And so we got married in 5 months. 5 months later.
Wow. It was 5 months later.
Yes, we got engaged in June, and then we got married in November. So,
wow.
it was no long engagement.
It wasn't long.
And unlike a lot of people, just based on my story, I didn't dream about like what my wedding dress was going to look like and getting married. And I have a lot of examples of that. Most relationships were not very good that I was used to. So I already was like, it's cool, I can have this dress, or I'm not really pressed. And if anyone who's been to our wedding knows, we didn't even have a reception. We just had, these delicious cupcakes. They were everything. But we didn't have a reception. We got married, we got in the limo, and we got out of there because it was a long time. So
right.
Yeah. So
wow. So I remember you guys being young when you married, right? And I just remember thinking like, wow, like how did God just put these young people together and it's meant to be, because a lot of times we do look at age when it comes to marriage and we're like, well, you're more mature when you're this age and you need to wait until you're more solid financially. And I just remember thinking after hearing Pastor Lawrence being prophetic with you guys and saying it's time. And like, I remember certain things that he would say, to y'all. And I just remember thinking like, dang, like, okay, all right. Everyone's life is different.
Yes.
And when he says it's time, then it's time. And you guys now have been married for 12 years, right?
Almost 12 years in November.
Almost 12 years.
Next month. Shoot, that's next month.
Right, it's next month, right?
I was realizing like, oh, that's next month. Yes, almost 12 years. And it's crazy to look back and think that it's been that long. And just God.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. So I remember Mike being very focused during like your engagement period, because Mike was playing his bass with Jared and I when we had like our little group, right?
Yes, that's right. Oh, I remember that.
So for those who don't know, I would like sing out every now and then at different places. Jared was playing his trumpet and Mike was playing the bass. And I remember though, Mike told us like, because he was so focused, he told us like, yeah, I'm going to minister with you guys, but I'm probably not going to be able to do this for long. And we were like, okay, well, we're going to ride this thing out. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So time went on. You guys are engaged. And of course, you're kind of busy too because you're planning the engagement or planning the wedding and all these things. And so when Mike had to go, he left. You know what I'm saying? Like when Algenia called him, like, I need you, Mike was gone, right? And then when it came time for him to leave, like he was like, all right, my time is up. But we always knew at some point it was coming to an end because he made that clear to begin with. So he was very intentional and very focused. And it's like he just knew his assignments, and he knew like, look, I'm going to be here. I'm going to be here for now. But at some point, I'm gone. You know what I'm saying?
He's always been, very intentional. And so you had kind of just mentioned before that about, us being young and just, having more maturity. Young people tend to not have as much maturity when it comes to finances, when it comes to responsibility. But I think our upbringing, our experiences kind of threw us into this courtship. And when you take sex or you take this sexual temptation out, not fully out, but you kind of take it out of the equation. Now we spent the whole 2 years focusing literally on just that, like our finances. He saw my finances. I interned in DC a lot and I got paid while I interned, and I would spend all my money on food. And he's like, what are you spending your money on? I don't understand. And so we would have frank conversations. We shared our finances before we even got married. We took a lot of trips and stuff before we got married to be able to experience those things, but also to grow our relationship, to grow into maturity. And that we spent a lot of time praying. We spent time, we would like go to the park and have Bible study and just like those things that, you know, yeah, you experience it once, you know, you get older, or you can generate these things now, no matter your age, as long as you kind of put those other things to the side and stay focused. He's really good at staying focused. So I was like, well, I want the same thing. So if it's a goal, I'm going after it. It doesn't matter what it is. And so we did a lot of that stuff beforehand. So it kind of, when it got time to get married, it was a no-brainer. We said, when we get married, we don't want to have debt when we go on the honeymoon. That's really the honest reason. We didn't have a reception, and people were saying they were going to pay for it. People were saying, hey, we'll support you. You can have it here. I remember even Pastor Lawrence might have even said, like, hey, I can help you out with, you know, the location, or just providing any assistance you need, as he always did. And we were like, no, we don't want to have, we kept going back and forth. We don't want to have debt. When we go on this plane, I want to make sure everything is good. And that's all a testament to the focus that Mike has. You know, I'm not going into my marriage in debt. I'm not. So those things, all of those things, and marriage counseling, you know, that you go through before you get married, we kind of spent a lot of time, focused time on that. And I was out of college by then. I was working, but it was like the beginning stage of work, you know, where it's still fresh and new. So it wasn't as stressful. And so we spent a lot of focused time just like on our finances, on our relationship. When I get angry, what do? Do I lash out? Do I retreat? When you get angry, what do? You know, talk about our emotions and, you know, just all those relationship things that sometimes you don't find out till later, but we're going to do it now and figure out what it is now, and then set a plan and go for it. So
that's great. That's great. And, you know, that's why God always knows when it's time, because I'm thinking about people who don't even have that mindset at 35 or 40 when it comes to, we're not going to be in debt. You know, after like this wedding is not going to put us in debt. You know what I mean? A lot of people don't have that mindset. So for you all to have that mindset at such a young age is a blessing. So did you know I started having feelings for Jared the night of y'all's wedding?
No, I did not. What?
So after your wedding,
I remember were you in the, I mean, not front row, but you were in at least third or fourth row. Pretty to the front. Okay.
I was pretty close. Because again, you know, Mike, I had developed a relationship with Mike because he was playing alongside me. And then Jared and I were closer at that point. He already made it clear that he had feelings for me, but you know, I wasn't, you know.
Yeah.
So that day we went, it was me, Jasmine, and Regina. We went to, me, Jasmine, Regina. We went to Jared's house to watch Sound of Music. Completely random. So I had never seen the movie, and they were just like, you need to see it. It's such a good movie. Okay. And I was just like, okay. So I remember we were watching the movie, and Jared, he made a joke or something, and I like hit him on the arm, right? And Jasmine looked at me, and she was like, you like him? And I was like, girl, bye. Like, I don't like him, right?
Think about him.
Right. So it didn't really hit me, but I think it was the next morning I woke up and I said, oh my God, I have feelings for him.
Oh my God.
So it started the evening of your wedding. And when I eventually told Jared, I think it was a week or two later, after I realized I had feelings for him, when I actually shared it with him, one of his first questions was, this isn't because we were just at Mike and Algenia's wedding. Like he wanted to be sure, like it wasn't because I was up there looking all good at the altar, you know, and you got just this wedding fever that you just have all of a sudden have feelings for me, right? And I let him know. I said, no, And I even checked myself, you know, when I realized I had feelings, I thought about your wedding and I said, is it because I was just at their wedding that I now have feelings for him?
Mm-hmm.
And it was not. It was God. I mean, I don't know any other way to say it. I truly believe it was God. So
start thinking about all those times that you guys have been friends and been together,
right.
and they start to come back, and you're like, it's all
Yeah.
little things.
Yeah. It just happened to be around the time that you guys got married. And so it's just fun when I can think back to, you know, that special time in your life and think about my life at that moment. And, you know, fast forward 2 years later, we got married. So
Right. God's timing.
Um,
God's
God's timing. God's timing. So I had another question for you though, because as you're sharing just your powerful story, right? You shared how you were in that toxic relationship up until freshman year, maybe going into sophomore year of college, right? But then you meet Mike shortly thereafter, and then by the time you graduate, you're engaged
Yeah.
to Mike. So it was like God did such a quick work in you. I have a song, and in the song it says, God blessed me in the area where I sinned.
Mm.
So you explained how you had all of these relationships, right? You
Mm-hmm.
weren't doing the right thing, you were sinning. You just ended this toxic relationship, and then the next thing you know, there's Mike, and you guys get married very soon after that. So
Yeah.
talk about when you think about how God did that quick work, like what does that mean to you?
Um, well, first of all, it's a blessing. I always tell Mike, I'm so blessed that you decided to choose this ghetto girl from DC to be your wife. Yeah, all these girls over here, you could chose anybody, but you chose
Mhm.
me. But in perspective, it didn't. I didn't know that it was a quick work because I'd only known this period of time with
Mhm.
God. That's it. So to me, this is God working. This is it. It's not
Mhm.
necessarily a time thing. This is how God moves. And later on, you learn
Mhm.
like some people it don't take it don't do like that. I remember Pastor Lawrence saying that the things that other people it takes them longer. It's not going to take you that long. I don't remember why I remember that, but
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
just remember him saying that. So I hold on to that. Those prophetic words that he speaks. But it didn't seem long to me. It didn't seem short to me. It just seemed like God moved. I
Mhm.
think what's more prevalent or what stands out more is the background of the person that you see or the person I'm describing to you in college, because in the background, there are no healthy relationships in my family. There are no
Mhm.
people in my family that went to a 4-year college. There are no
Mhm.
people in my family that, like I keep going on and on and on that would have a healthy relationship. There are no people in my family that believe in the Lord Jesus Christ as far
Mhm.
as my immediate family. Like I have other family members, but the
Mhm.
immediate one, the ones that I grew up with. And
Mhm.
so I think that is what kind of stands out more when I talk about it. It's
Mhm.
not necessarily the quickness or that it's long or short, but that it's so different from
Mhm.
what I experienced and the strength that God had to imbue me with or like put into me or hold me
Mhm.
up with for me to do something that was not only different, but that was contrary to everything that I had been taught and everything that anyone would say. I remember talking to my cousin mom about joining A&Q, and she's like, I just don't understand why you want to do that. Like, you don't want to
Mhm.
do a different one. And because you had to pay money like to join
Mhm.
and get,
Mhm.
like dues and stuff. And she's like, I don't know about that. And
Mhm.
I got money from my mom passing away. When I went to high school, when I went to college, I was an independent student. I was not, oh, my mom has to sign my FAFSA. I had to sign it myself. My brother
Mhm.
would help me, but I was an independent student because my mom, was not there. And then my great grandmother who raised me had also passed away. So
Mhm.
um, these are the things that kind of stands out. I
Mhm.
know something that's really long is if I was to fast forward, as far as the time, because I had experienced that and I thought, oh, that was normal. When I got married, or before we got married, me and Mike said we wanted to have 12 kids. My mother-in-law never let me live that down. Every time I have a kid, she says, okay, you got 9 more to go.
Right.
And I think we just really wanted to have a big family. And so we talk about that often. And so when we got married, we thought, you know, we're young, we're healthy, kind of. We're going to get pregnant right away. We thought we were pregnant on our honeymoon. We ain't know.
Okay.
We only been there for 2 days. And we're like, what, my stomach? I don't know. Oh, this pizza's just making me upset, you know? So we didn't know, right? So it took a long time to me to get pregnant. We were together for a year before I actually ever got pregnant. And even then I miscarried. And that was really hard. And I thought, this should be easy, God. You brought me out of all that. If the enemy was going to take me out and kill the purpose that you have designed for me, he could have did it back then.
Right.
So when I go and I have the baby, I mean, you know, I'm pregnant, and then I was only pregnant for maybe like a couple of weeks, and then I miscarry. I'm like, what is this? I experienced death, but not like this. This is unexpected. This is all my hopes and dreams just crashed. Like, what am I gonna do now? As if I can't get pregnant again. But you know, when that happens, you know, you go through a range of emotions, and it does bring up some of the past grief that you've experienced before. It can't help but to. So it took, I think, another year or two. I think we had been married maybe 3 years, maybe 2.5 years before I got pregnant again. And even then I was riddled with anxiety, and I had carried anxiety for a while. I didn't know that I even had anxiety, that was a thing. And I can't even say necessarily when I developed it, but that was something that I carried with me from even before college. So when I got pregnant again, I was worried, as I think anyone would be, that this baby is going to die too. And I didn't know. I was like, God, okay, what are you going to do? Like, how are you, like, the way this baby is going to live is only going to be because of you, because there's nothing I can do. Right. And so that was one of those things where the blessings of God, you lived in this, almost like this huge high of, God bless me so greatly. And I didn't even realize that he blessed me, because I was just like, oh, okay. But then for this to happen, you're like, okay, God, what did I do? How did I sin? What's wrong with me? What am I not doing right that, you know, this would happen? And so Stephen is such a blessing for us to have him. My first son, he's 8 now. But I always say I prayed like Hannah, because I was like, God, I want a child, and what do I have to do? And if you don't want me to have kids, God, just tell me now. But if you do, you gave us a vision, you know, like I said, Mike's always vision focused. You gave us a vision, you gave us many different things that you have us carrying inside of us that you want us to birth. And so part of that is having kids. And so every time me and Mike go to an interest meeting for foster care, for adoption, I end up pregnant. So I think we had did that. And then next thing I know, I got pregnant. And
oh, wow.
So
wow. What a blessing.
I don't know if that answers your question, but
no, you answered it from your heart. So absolutely. I remember, I don't know whose wedding it was, but you were pregnant with Stephen, and everyone, of course, is just so excited for you. Like, Algenia, like you ready? Was Jasmine's wedding? It's like, are you ready? You ready to be a mom? And you were just like, I mean, yeah. Like, and I think maybe that was some of the anxiety. I didn't know, but maybe that was some of the anxiety that you were experiencing, because you weren't really like, you were just like, I mean, we'll see how this goes. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. I was like, hey, but she's honest. Like, she's not going to put on this facade. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You mentioned wedding. And so I mean, not to put a damper, but I remember it was at you guys' wedding, which was like so beautiful and gorgeous. I was so happy for you guys. I remember we were saying, yes, Danielle finally said yes to Jared. We're so excited. We were just so happy. Like, yes, you know. And then we were pregnant then. And then I think I miscarried like that night or like the same day. And I remember how beautiful your wedding was and how horrible it was that I miscarried on that day. I was like, God, another day. But I always remember it though. But I remember that. I remember talking to Keisha and I'm trying to remember, was she pregnant at the same time or something? She might have been, because I think her son's a year older than Steven or something like that. But the point is that I remember that. And so, yes, it was probably at the point that I realized that the baby was going to be okay based on just God saying, hey, you're good, that I realized, oh crap, just to bring the story full circle, I don't actually know how to be a mom because my mom was not there. And like, it was when I found out that, you know, when I was younger, I was on crack and I didn't know when I was born. It was at that point that I realized that my mom's not even around to help me with the baby. And if she was, does she even know what to do? I don't know. So it was one of those things. And maybe that's, you know, part of where the anxiety came from, of just, like, I don't know what I'm going to do because I don't know that I'm going to be a good mom. Like, I think I will be because I'm better than my mom was, but I mean, that's not much of a standard, is it? Like, you know, no disrespect to my mom and all the things that she did and all the things that she experienced, but I have no clue how this is going to turn out because my toolbox for being a mom is very limited. And, you know, some people grow up their whole life, they get to see that, or you get to plan that wedding, or you get to, you know, think about your wedding dress, or, you know, having a house and being married. And I didn't think about those kind of things. That was not something I thought about when I was little or anything. So I think that was part of that anxiety.
Wow. I know that can open up a whole nother episode, you know what I mean? But I do want you to briefly answer what helped you once Stephen was born and once you began to, you know, mother him. Did your mindset change immediately or did it take some time?
Yeah, so maybe another episode. I don't know. I mean, call me back. But actually, with Steven, when I had him, I went through postpartum depression really hard for at least a year. And I didn't even know that's what it was until a year later, when after it had taken place. We had moved to Gaithersburg after I had him. We had bought a house before we had Steven, like when we were just married and stuff. And
I remember
Michael,
that.
yeah, Michael was really focused because he also was joining the police force, and he had tried numerous times before, and he tried Baltimore City, I think or Baltimore County. He had tried some other places and he was not getting accepted. And so around the time that we were getting married, he had finally gotten accepted to Metro Police. And so he was going to start his job there. And when we finally got pregnant years later, he was still a police officer, but he worked midnights. So I'm up all night with the baby by myself, and Mike's at work, and then he would come home and he would sleep because he has to go back to work. I didn't work while I had Steven. I stayed home with him for like the first 2.5 years. Again, my anxiety was at an all-time high. I did not trust him with anybody. I didn't trust him with myself. I didn't trust him with my husband because he's half asleep, you know, and that's no reflection of my husband, but I just didn't trust anybody with him. And so I would barely go outside because I'm like, oh, what if he gets hurt? What if this? What if that? What if I had a baby before and I lost it? And I don't know if it was because of me or not, you know, at that point. And so I was like, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure he's okay. And so when I first had him, that postpartum depression, I was just angry. Like, and then sucks because you call for help, like you call different numbers or you get resources, and all they want to know is, do you want to kill your baby? I'm like, no, I don't want to kill my baby. I just don't understand why I'm so upset. Like, why am I so angry? I don't kill anybody. I'm just mad. Like, and so again, I didn't know that that's what it was until probably after I came out of it. And I think the support of my family, we were going to a church then. We were going to a church in Prince George's County, even though we lived in Germantown or Gaithersburg. This is about an hour difference that we would drive and stuff. And so I think just support of different people. My sister-in-law was a huge supporter during that time because she had experienced something similar. And so she would come and visit and those kind of things. But honestly, can I say that I turned to God? I didn't. I think all of that happening at once kind of, it was really hard for my faith to stand at that point. I don't think it was till years later. Like I said, I stayed home with him for like 2.5 years. It probably wasn't until I started going back to work. I started substitute teaching while I had him. So I would go substitute teach for a little bit, like a day here, a day there, and then I would come back home. And I realized that I had thought for this long time I was going to be this stay-at-home mom. That's all I wanted, right? I'm going to stay home with my kid. I'm not going to leave my kid at anybody's house because that's what my mom did, right? You know, you guys now, like, that's what my mom did. So I'm not going to do that. And I didn't even know that's why I did that. And I realized that I am a better mom when I go to work. For me, I do better if I go to work and I get to get all my creative juices and I get to interact because I like people. You know, when you're at home with your kid, it's just you and the kid. He doesn't talk yet. So I work better when I get to be out and then I come back and then I get to interact with him and I get to this and that. And he does better when I go out because he gets to also not be sheltered in the house and just with mom. And I applaud. I have quite a few friends that stay home now. They homeschool and stuff like that. And they love it. Like and I'm like, I wanted to love it so bad. But it just wasn't for me. And so it took me some time to realize that. And so I don't think I really came out of it until I started, starting to go to work and just get that break, if you will. Because when you stay at home, there's no break.
No break.
At all. No break at all. And so I started to go to work, and then from substitute teaching, they were like, oh, you should just apply. So this is at the church that we went to. They had a school, Riverdale. And so, oh, you should apply. I think you would be a really good teacher. And I actually remember Karina, Holden's wife, saying, I think you'll be a good teacher. I'm like, girl, whatever. I don't like kids. And so I ended up applying to be a teacher, and then they're like, oh no, we're just going to use you as a sub. And that's how I started subbing for like 2 years. And then finally I applied again, I think, and then that's when I became a teacher, a middle school teacher. And through subbing, that's when I realized I can't do high school, I can't do elementary, middle school is the thing. So once I started working, Stephen went to school too. That really, I think, freed me up a little bit. So yeah, that's
just okay. Wow. So we are wrapping up. You spoke about how none of your family went to college. None of your family had, good godly relationships that led into good godly marriages. They didn't really go to church or anything like that. And as you explained that, I just thought about how you were the generational curse breaker in your family.
Absolutely.
So as you are the curse breaker in your family and you now have 3 kids of your own, what are some of the things that you do differently as a parent that you didn't get growing up? And what are some of the lessons that you teach to your children that, looking back, you would have wanted as a child?
I think the main thing I do with my kids, there's twofold. Is one, spend time with them. I think they learn from our example. It can get stressful trying to figure out, what do I teach them? How do I raise them the right way? When half of teaching is just them seeing you doing it every single day. Them seeing you pray, them seeing you read your word, them seeing you walk with God, how you interact with other people. And then I think the second part is teaching I do teach them, but I teach them language, meaning that when you feel a certain way, when you are uncertain about something, when you disagree with something, how do we talk about those things? Or how do we express those things? Because I feel like those are the things that when they get older are going to make a difference. They're so young, and yet Stephen has already gotten baptized and he's strong in his faith for him to be only 8. I mean, for him to be 8, I'm like, okay, like, I didn't experience that. So I didn't know what that was like. But, if I hit my foot or if I do something in the kitchen and I say, oh, he's like, oh, are you okay, Mom? Are you good?
Aww.
And I'm like, yes, I'm good. I might have just bumped something. He's like, okay, well, let's pray. And then he just starts praying, and I'm like, okay, I'm good. We don't have to pray. Like, so I'm like, I'm good. You finish cooking the dinner. And he's like, no, we're going to pray right now. And Abigail will do the same thing. She'll get a boo-boo and she'll say, can you pray for my boo-boo? And you could barely see it. But okay. Just that language. And then I know, just like being a generational curse breaker, which I fully accept that responsibility because this is what God has placed on me. And so just like that, I know I have to stand in the gap for my kids, and I know they're going to face opposition. This is a perfect time, even now, as an example, we're about to approach Halloween. Well, we don't celebrate Halloween. So I have my kids walking around, we don't celebrate Halloween, that's the devil. Right. No, I don't want my kids to be like that. I ain't gonna win something right saying things like that. But I do want them to have the words, or maybe the know how to communicate. No, we do not celebrate that in our house because we only celebrate Jesus, or just that language that they're going to need when they're not around us, or when they're not with us. And so I think that could have helped me when I was younger to be able to express myself, or to be able to communicate what I wanted or what I needed. There are so many parts of my story that I didn't mention, that I was touched inappropriately when I did spend time with my mom by other people that she would have at the house. But I couldn't tell my brothers that because they'd flip out and it'd be a whole thing of, who are they? And I don't know where they're at. And so those are things that I didn't necessarily speak on, but I wish I had done so. Maybe I would not have gone through, the troubled past that I might have gone through, or I would have received more support. Same thing with the when I had my son and then I experienced postpartum depression, being able to communicate that to my husband instead of yelling at him, I hate you, right? Just being able to communicate, like, I don't know what's going on with me right now, but I am going through something and I need support, and not just lashing out because I don't know what's going on. My emotions are all over the place. So I think just that language that, and I tried to do that. I try to empower my kids to, like, Stephen he will tell me now, if we're having a conversation and he disagrees, well, that's your opinion. That's what he'll tell me. And I'm like, well, this is the kid I raised, so it's fine, and he might be right. That's right. It is my opinion, but as your mother, do it anyway. So, having that conversation, it's a flip side. It's on one side, it's like so great because then he can go and pray. But the other side is, they will challenge you, but that's okay because I'd rather you challenge here and I correct you appropriately than for you to challenge out there and you get a completely different response. You don't know what to say and what to do, and you shut down. That's right. That's right. Hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah, it did. That's good. That's good. Well, before we end, I do want you to share any advice, any encouragement, any wisdom for anybody in your shoes. If you could speak to that 16-year-old or that 17-year-old who has a very similar story to you, what would you say?
I would say, I know that life seems hard, but God is greater. And if you trust him, you can find him. I would say leave everything else that you have behind, leave all the thoughts that you have behind, leave all the expectations, leave, the things that your family is telling you or not telling you about how they're interacting with you. Leave that all behind, and run after God with everything that you have. If you go find him, he will be there. Seek and you will find, is what the Bible says. So I know that God will answer any cry that you have for him, any question that you have for, even if you don't know what to say, the spirit inside of you, the spirit man inside of you can know what to say. And so I just encourage everybody, even if you've experienced it before and you didn't really fully deal with it now, that's another thing. I might not be the 16-year-old me, but I dealt with that, and I never really fully let it go. Now let it go. I recently had my dad pass away a few years ago, and I made a Facebook post, and a lot of people it resonated with a lot of people, and I was shocked because I just did that for me. But my dad, we had such a fraught relationship, but because he wasn't around and for many reasons, but it was after he passed away that I realized I wish I had forgiven him when he was still here, because forgiveness is for me and it's not for him. It's freeing me from whatever is holding me back from whatever God has for me. So another thing, we always think that God is, if God's not going to bless me, why would I want to chase after him? Or if I'm still going to have heartache and pain and all this stuff, why am I going to do God? Like, I don't need to do that. But that's not true. God is for you. Everything that he has is for you. So if you run after him, if you seek after him, he will give that to you. If you are faithful to run after him. And even if you fall away, go back. Go back. We think that, I fell away, I can't go back, or I'm sinning. I was even sinning when I was married, but for various reasons or in different ways. But God is still faithful, that he can still answer your prayers. He can still know your heart and know where you're at and still speak to that and say, I still love you. He wants you. He desires you. That is my biggest thing. God is there for you. Anything I could say is just to get you to God. It's just to get you to Christ. And so I point everybody that way. I serve in the youth at my church now, and it's the same thing that I tell them now. And they talk about all this stuff that's happening, in school, and even as a teacher, I do the same thing. Just talking to the kids and encouraging them. This is like they have no drive or they don't want to be anything. And I'm like, you're going to be amazing. You're awesome. Just encouraging them. And so I just want to encourage anybody out there who did experience the same thing. The grief is really hard, but it's only hard because you haven't started to let go. Once you start to let go, it gets easier and it gets easier. Not completely gone, but it gets easier. And let God be your comforter. He will do it. He will do it. So.
That's good. That's good. One last thing, Algenia. Are you still healing from your mom's death even today?
I think I am, but just in a different level. Meaning that the things that I had to heal from before were the hurt and the pain of why my mom never wanted to stay. How come I wasn't important enough for her to be around? And then she left forever. Or why did she leave me? And now I have to it feels like I had to take care of my brothers and things like that kind of stuff. But now it's a healing of, that was a hard thing. How do I turn this into a testimony? Or I'm getting down on myself. No. I can't do that. I have to make sure that I turn my face to God, just like she turned her face to God. And so it's more of I'm using it or leveraging it as a way to get me to where I need to go, if that makes sense. I'm using that to propel me to the goals that God has for me, and as a reminder of what God has set for me. So if God has set me as the chain breaker in my family, my mom's not here, I have to do it. And I'm going to step up and I'm going to do it. It doesn't matter what's in the way. It doesn't matter what's, stopping us, or if there are difficulties, I'm going to go for it and I'm going to do it full force. So I think I'd use it like that. Even it doesn't hurt like it used to. because I overcame the hurt that I felt from it happening. Those things that that I got injured from that happening, I already overcame those. So now it's one of those things where it's just a reminder, like, we're not promised this life. And I don't know how long I'm going to live. How many days can I go and glorify God in everything that I do while I'm here?
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And the reason why I asked that question is because there may be someone watching this who may have just lost a loved one, a parent even, or maybe some time has passed, but they still are heavy in the grief. But what you said was you're healing in a different way. So for people to know that the grief doesn't last always in the same way, right? That it can happen, the healing can happen in stages. So now, like you said, you're able to now leverage the grief or the experience of losing your mom, and you're able to use that now as a testimony. It's like I see healing as stages, because now I'm able to just see it from a different vantage point. I'm able to now see it from a different perspective because of where I am in my life now. You know what I mean? So to encourage people that seasons do change, but we do still have to do our part. If you are still stuck in grief and it's been years and years, then you may need to see a counselor. You may need to do something different, because to have the same grief that you had when you first experienced the death of a loved one, there may be some type of trauma or something going on that you need to do a deeper you just may need to do something different.
You said something really good. It was perspective. It's the
Yeah.
perspective has changed. Where I was standing and where I'm standing now are two different places. So now I see things differently. I'm able to see more of the impact. An example, Stephen recently, yesterday or the day before, he was chosen to say the pledge for the district. So this is at district office, district meeting. You have the superintendent, all these different people
Oh, wow. Okay.
for our school district, and Stephen
Yeah.
was chosen by his principal to go and do that. Now, one perspective could be, I'm so grieved, I'm so upset, I'm so mad, I'm so sad. My mom cannot be here to see that. Another perspective would be, God, thank you for the sacrifice, whatever sacrifice it was that my mom made for me to be able to be here. I'm so grateful that whatever my mom did, whatever happened, that you guarded her, that I was still able to come out of her womb, still be able to be healthy, to get me to this point, to birth this child, for him to be able to do this. Look at your son doing this great work, this great thing, and being able to, they read his bio, and his bio says that he loves to talk about Jesus and he loves to read his Bible. This is recorded, so anybody can watch it. The whole district can see it. And so that's the perspective. I think the grief does not just apply to a person passing away. I, a few years ago, had a relationship that broke down. This relationship I had for a long time. It helped me. I'm not talking about my ex or anything, but this friendship that I had isn't. And so to have to grieve that this friendship is no longer was really hard. It felt like it had, like the person had passed away, but they had not. And so I feel like you liken it to the same thing. And every time, it took years for that to even, like, for me to get to a good place about it, or a better place. But anytime anything comes up, the first thing I do is check my heart with what God says. Okay, God, I'm still feeling some kind of way about this, or I saw the person and I still felt this. Okay, I got to go back. I got to go back to your word. I got to go back to my prayer room. I got to go and I got to work on that, because there is this thing, and not to preach a whole message, right? But there is this thing where you can have a stumbling block stop you from getting to God. You can decide you will not forgive, and that will be the thing that will make it that you cannot get to God. If you do not forgive, how can God forgive you for all the things that you have done? And I just think of it that way, and I say, you know what, God, your word is true. And if I have to forgive, I'm going to forgive every single time. And then, of course, you get to that point where you're like, God, I forgave them already. And then what God say? You forgive and set over and over and over and over. You forgive your brother over and over and over again. You actually have to put that in practice. That's what you're doing. But I think that's similar to relationships that end. To grieve that relationship is no longer, and you're about to send a text, oh, I can't text them, or I'm about to call them, can't. And so just grieving that. But like you said, the stages. So if at the first stage you're like really angry, upset, whatever, okay, what are we going to do about that? Okay, you start to do some work. I also went to counseling as well for a little bit, but God did most of the counseling. I gave myself over to God, and I said, God, do a work. Because that's the relationship that God has with me. That's how we work. And I started to pull on some other people, some outside resources and friends and stuff to help me get through what that looked like. I think that's important too. A friendship can be something that you grieve. And those can be the hardest ones because they're not dead and they're still there and you still see them.
That's right. That's right. Listen, I understand. I understand completely. Wow. That was really good, Algenia. Yeah. We have to, when we know Jesus, when we have a relationship with the Lord, he is there to help us to get through whatever grief we're dealing with. He is there, and we absolutely have a part to play. So if he's calling us to fast, if he's calling us to pray every morning until whatever this is in our heart gets out, we have to do that. And we can't blame God and say, well, God, you should have healed me by now. Are you doing your part? Because he's going to do his part, but are you doing your part? So, wow, this was wonderful. Wow.
Yay.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here just to share your story. I already know it's going to bless so many people. And I pray that it reaches some young people who, are in that same boat that you were in, or a similar boat. I just kept thinking of young people while you were sharing because, man, inner city youth go through a lot. And with the youth that we minister to at our church and with the youth that Jared sees on a day-to-day basis as a teacher, it's like we always hear so many stories and we're just like, God, cover these children. Cover these children. But again, to hear your testimony, to know that you were that child who it could have gone a totally different way, but to see who you are today. I know it's cliche, but I have to say it. You do not look like what you've been through. It's all God.
Yes.
It's all God. So
kids say that all the time. The kids say that, oh, yes, you did that. You did that. You did that. I'm like, yes, I know I don't look like it. I know I don't portray myself that way, but God did a work. He could do a work in you.
That's right. That's right. I love it. Well, thank you, Algenia, so much for being on once again. And thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. I hope that you were blessed by this episode. I want you to share this with others so that they can hear this incredible testimony, and that they may be blessed. And I want you to like this episode. I want you to leave a comment letting us know something that stood out from this episode today. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel Breakthrough Conversations. In the meantime, everyone, enjoy your day and be blessed.